There's a world of miracles inside our bodies.
See every color on Earth. Hear sounds that inspire. Feel more than just heat. Taste a world of flavor.
Nice.
Smell the miracles of nature. See, smell, hear, taste, touch. Widen your world.
There are those of us who like to venture to the unexplored, to see the beauty in the strange and unknown. Those of us who go out there with a sense of wonder. If you're one of us, and if you want to explore more of this great planet, we're ready to take you there. It's time. Turkish Airlines. Widen your world.
Good evening again. We are together in Eurasia Airshow 2020, the last webinar of the day, the second day. This is the fourth webinar, by the way, in Eurasia Airshow. Tonight's title is How to Counter UAS, Unmanned Aerial Systems, Unmanned Aerial Vehicles. In this chapter, in this webinar, we will mainly talk about unmanned aerial systems, new technologies, and threat detections. And we will be together with first Mr. David Komar will be with us. And then actually in our seminar, in our webinar, we have two distinguished speakers, Mr. David Komar and Mr. Andy Roberts. But I will start with Mr. David Komar. He is former Director of Capabilities and Developments Directorate in the United States Army Capabilities Integration Center. I would like to see Mr. Komar if he is available. Yes.
Yes, good
Welcome to
evening.
our webinar. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Komar, you have a great experience and knowledge about unmanned aerial systems and vehicles, and we are ready to listen your experience and your notes about this subject. Floor is yours, please.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with everyone here this evening. When it comes to countering unmanned aerial systems, one of the things that's very interesting to me is that this is one of the instances where the military requirements in the development of technology is really leading the private sector and what in their developments. And I think back to, for instance, the internet, development of the internet, development of cellular communications. Those were probably two of the last times that the military actually led the private sector as far as technology development, capability development. Over the last 15 or 20 years at least, really the opposite's been true, where the military has been adopting and adapting capabilities and technologies that were initially designed and developed in the private sector for the private sector. So one of the things that I spend a lot of time focusing on is the impact of counter UASs and the threats they pose, not just to military formations and military facilities, but also more generically to all different types of critical infrastructure. So whether it's their dams, transportation nodes, power generation, electric power generation facilities, uh, and the like. These are all things that not only are necessary and required to support military operations, but the civilian sector, the private sector as well, the government sector, and obviously the incredible economic impacts of potentially being denied access to those things. Additionally, one of the challenges that organizations are facing is industrial espionage. The use of the use of UASs to steal trade secrets, either through their ability to observe very stealthily and sometimes at fairly long ranges, uh, things that a company or a corporation is trying to develop, or a government is trying to develop. But there's actually even additional capabilities and threats associated with that. Just think of the example, for example, if someone were to fly 2 or 3 small drones onto the roof of a company headquarters or a government headquarters and do that in the middle of the night, put those drones to sleep, turn them off, and then during normal business hours and duty hours in the morning, turn them back on and tap into the Wi-Fi system. Very difficult to detect other than through just normal cybersecurity measures. And then again, they could turn off as soon as they were either detected or when they were finished collecting. They would have no need necessarily to transmit while they were there, and then they could be flown off again in the middle of the night. So those are some significant challenges. Of course, people are very concerned about interference with aviation operations and how to counter that. Even for individual citizens or organizations, the impact of loss of privacy. I'm sure most people have seen some of the videos on the internet of where people have used drones to invade someone's privacy. I think there's a pretty famous one that I've seen, that there's a person on the roof of a building and someone flew a drone up to take a picture of that to view that person. And the only thing they had to counter that with was they went and got a broomstick to try to take that down. So those are some of the significant challenges, and as you can see, a lot of those overlap into the military requirements when you're looking at protecting air operations, critical facilities that might be a military command post. It might be a logistics installation. It might be transportation node that enables the military to operate. So there's really quite a bit of commonality associated with that. And one of the big challenges is that there's no silver bullet. There's no one solution that's going to fit all cases, against all threats. You really need to make sure that you're looking at the problem holistically, and oftentimes, if you look at, for instance, we can learn from military operations. People sometimes forget about things that used to be very, very commonly practiced and understood. Things like camouflage, concealment, dispersion, things that make it more difficult for an adversary or potential adversary to be able to gather information, and certainly make it more difficult to conduct some sort of direct attack or just identify what the disposition of the forces are. And the same holds true in the private sector and government sector to some degree, there are some opportunities to be able to conceal what you're doing from unwanted eyes. You need to, and certainly need to take advantage of that. But you've got to have a holistic and a layered approach to the defense. And I always, as I talk to companies and governments and other clients, I always recommend let's start with the easiest and the cheapest level first, and then we can, as we more clearly identify what the threat is and what a potential adversary or criminal activity is trying to achieve, then you can build onto that. But it's absolutely critical that governments and the private sector, that they start building that capability now, because there is no one solution. You might say, okay, we're going to put an entire counter UAS dome over our facility. Well, that's great, until somebody just is able to put the drones in a shipping container or a truck or something that gets onto the facility, and then is able to do whatever it is um, that the adversary or the criminal's activity is trying to accomplish, whether it's directly attacking something or whether it's just gathering information. So you can develop some very, very expensive solutions that, if you're not careful, are inexpensive means. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and give Andy Roberts a chance to talk about some of the things he wants to discuss, and then I look forward to any questions we have.
Thank you for your remarks and the information that you shared with us. We are waiting Mr. Roberts to join us, but at the same time, I would like to ask a couple of questions on the subject, Mr. Komar. What is the most dangerous volume of UAS for the military organizations? What do you think?
Yes, one of the things that military organizations are working hard to be able to counter, it's an enormous challenge, and that's the notion of trying to defeat a swarm, where you've got multiple, sometimes potentially hundreds and potentially many hundreds of uh, of of, of drones or small UASs that it's not that they're necessarily so difficult to detect, although they may have, each individually may have a pretty small cross section, but with the number, they may be easy to detect. But the problem is how do you defeat them? How do it may, depending upon what effect the adversary is trying to achieve, it may only take one or two leakers, if you will, that get through the defenses in order for them to be able to achieve their aims behind the drone swarm. But that's a very difficult challenge, and I know there's a lot of very smart people working on that.
Yeah, yes. What about, I mean, what is the latest requirements for the counter UAS from the technology providers?
Yeah, some of the technology support that counter UAS capabilities really need is one of the most important is to be able to independently detect drones operating in the vicinity of the system. So it's not enough to have, say, some sort of electro optical where you have a you have an operator that's searching, but whether it's done by radar cross-section, by radar or infrared or some other means to be able to independently identify those. The second challenge is to locate, once you've detected them, to be able to accurately locate and identify hostile drones. The challenge here is there's many different methods of detecting the drone that work better. Some work better under certain conditions, whether that's certain light conditions, certain weather conditions. Some are much more capable to identify, to spot and locate and identify a hostile drone against a very busy backdrop. Some capabilities are challenged by terrain masking. So what's really important is to have a particularly for the military, to have a suite of detection and location and identification means that can cross cue each other. So if I recently saw a demonstration where there was a drone detected by radar, and then that drone went behind a masked system, and they were able to cross cue another acquisition technology. So that's the second thing, is locating, identifying hostile drones. The third thing is to be able to provide notice to and warn off drone operators. Now, for a military operation, that may not seem very important, but certainly for the government, in the government sector, or in the private sector or civilian sector, that could be very important. Because just say, for instance, there's a bad accident on a highway, and it's very, very difficult to access where the people are most injured and in most need of assistance. Even difficult to land a helicopter, but you could use a drone or some sort of small UAS to bring medical supplies, blood, plasma, whatever's necessary, and it can be done very quickly and very easily. Well, if a drone, if they're not able to, if they're not able to note it, to provide that notice and to warn them off, then your default is going to be to go ahead and take everything down. So that's very important as well. And then you've got to provide the counter UAS operators with countermeasure capability. And obviously there's many different capabilities, whether it's energy, whether it's electronic warfare, some kind of type of electronic warfare capability, but there's got to be countermeasures. And again, perhaps not as important on the military side, but definitely important on the government side and the private sector side, is some of those countermeasure capabilities not only being non-kinetic, but also ensuring that the results of employing that countermeasure capability doesn't harm innocent civilians and bystanders in the meantime. So you could say, all right, we've got this electronic warfare capability, and we'll just shut it down. We'll just shut down the drone, and then it falls up, comes out of the sky and causes some other damage. So those from a technology perspective, those are really, really critical. So we're looking at artificial intelligence and improved sensors, defeat mechanisms, as well as increasing the sophistication and the responsiveness of networking all of the various sensors and defeat mechanisms.
Yes. My third question, what should be the most strict steps for the national infrastructure security from the UAS attacks?
This is an enormous challenge, and I can speak for some of the challenges certainly that we're having in the United States. Uh, Part of it starts with government responsibility. What agency is responsible for protecting that infrastructure from UAS attacks? In the United States, uh, we have the Federal Aviation Administration that they'll tell you that they own everything from the ground up, um, but that's not necessarily practical. Uh, so that's one of the biggest challenges is a policy issue. And I tell you, if any of the uh, countries that are represented at the Eurasia Airshow have this year have solved that problem, please let me know, and I'll try to help our government solve that. But that's a huge challenge. It's a matter of what authorities um, and what restrictions that you can put on there. Now, certainly we have, as I'm sure most countries have around the world, have restricted the use of unmanned aerial systems within certain distances from airports. I think, gosh, it's been several years ago now. Uh, Heathrow Airport got shut down for, I think it was like 9 or 10 hours, something like that. And the economic impact of that was absolutely
Enormous.
devastating. Absolutely devastating. So, and likewise, other critical infrastructure. Most governments have put restrictions on the use of UASs in the vicinity. Uh, but again, that's just a rule. That's just a law. How do you enforce that? How do you ensure that that there aren't people that are doing it anyway? Um, Even something as simple as saying, okay, well, at a critical facility, we're gonna use some sort of electronic warfare jamming system, and we're gonna run it all the time. Well, uh, that may be fine for that facility, but if that facility is located in the vicinity of any other commercial or government facilities, they're probably not going to like being denied use of that part of the electromagnetic spectrum. So that's really challenging. That's why going back to my technology needs of having the capability to detect UASs, uh, you know, that are in the vicinity of the system that's doing the detection, as well as then locate and identify what that UAS is. So this is an enormous problem, and in addition to the fixed sites that you think of, electric power plants, dams, etc. Think about the challenges of just protecting the electrical distribution system within a country, where they typically rely on above ground substations located throughout metropolitan areas. So how do you protect those? Again, if you take a city, and it doesn't have to be that large, a million, a couple million, and you deny them, deny 70 or 80% of that city access to electricity, even for a day, the economic impact can be astonishing. is is and that's something that I know that nobody takes lightly now, in light of all of the just devastating economic impacts that the COVID pandemic has caused.
Yes, true. Mr. Komar, how big is the industry for to counter UAS? How big is it?
Well, the that's hopefully we can get Andy on here. He's probably better suited. I'm my expertise is more in threats and capability development. But certainly, this is an area I think is going to grow tremendously as 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 UASs continue to get more capable, less expensive, uh, and people are going to realize even more so, the need to protect critical infrastructure, to be able to protect their industrial facilities, et cetera. So and uh, the need to be able to do it without any, as we term in the military, collateral damage. So we're talking about defeating UASs without harming people around them. Directed energy certainly has its challenges. So I think this is really going to continue to grow, and I think that what we learn and the technologies that are developed through military applications, I think will serve as a stepping stone for the private sector and the government sector as far as the capabilities that they're developing um, to offset those threats.
Yes. I mean, maybe the final question in this chapter. What is the role of electronic warfare for to counter UAS? What do you think, Mr. Komar?
Yes, there's certainly a large role for electronic warfare, particularly in the military realm. The and that's you can use the electronic warfare to do a lot of different things. You can take control of a UAS. You can help use transmissions that it's making or receiving to help identify and deny access to those say radio RF commands from the operator. And again, people are getting much more savvy and doing things, for instance, like being able to use GPS or some inertial navigation system on a UAS to be able to have it fly a certain route, perform certain functions, whether it's take pictures or video at specific locations, keep that information on board so it doesn't even have to transmit while it's flying, and it doesn't have to receive any uh, any control from an operator through RF means. So it's virtually silent, if you will, uh, to the electromagnetic spectrum while it's conducting its operations. Um, so again, you can take control, identify it, and deny access to either the information or to or just by not allowing it to fly into the area. Now, once you've identified a UAS, then that's certainly changes how you can utilize electronic warfare. But in particularly in the government and in the private sector roles, sort of indiscriminate jamming, if you will, to keep a UAS from operating. Again, number one, it's only going to impact those UASs that are receiving RF control, have RF control. It's not going to necessarily do anything to UAS that's pre-programmed and is using some other means, unless you, for instance, if it's using GPS, sure, you could jam GPS, but again, what are the collateral effects of that? A lot of people in that area aren't necessarily going to be very pleased if they can't use their cell phone because they're not getting the timing from the GPS. Obviously, any commercial or private aircraft that are flying in the area are not going to be are not going to be very accepting of just this sort of indiscriminate use of electronic warfare to deny that capability. So it definitely has a role. It definitely has a role, but it's only, like I mentioned before, there's no silver bullet. There's no one solution. There's things it can do, and there's things it can't do, and it needs to be part of that integrated and layered solution set.
Thank you very much again. I'm trying to get a connection with Mr. Andy Roberts. I will try again once more. But Mr. Komar, the lines are very busy. Everybody is trying to get a good internet connection all over the world. It's not just a local or regional problem, because webinars and online seminars and this kind of meetings are very, very popular in this time due to coronavirus pandemic, and especially in this part of the world, and the United States. What is the time? Which city are you? Where are you at the
I'm
moment?
in Kansas City, Missouri. So it is 11:37
11.
a.m. here.
Yes, in the
Yes.
morning. So people are starting to use their internet heavily, and in Europe as well. It's evening time. They are also downloading and watching something. Maybe there are some difficulty on the lines, and I think we need more satellites, and satellites will also help to operate UAS in a better performance level. But it's a reality. They are becoming more and more important everywhere in every army. Um, uh, just I will try to connect my friends in the technical department. Dear friends, is there a chance to connect Mr. Roberts for a couple of minutes, because it's already 8:40 p.m. in Turkish local time. So we talked nearly 40 minutes with Mr. Komar, and his great remarks and knowledge. It was very useful. I think it will not be possible to connect, unfortunately, at this time, Mr. Andy Roberts, campaign manager of Leonardo. But next time, maybe we can try tomorrow again to communicate with him. He's also a great information with this company and the sector as well. Mr. Komar, thank you for being with us. We really appreciate your contribution, your speech, and your knowledge and information. And have a good day for today.
Well, thank you
And
very
thanks
much for
again.
having me. It's been my pleasure, and appreciate the thoughtful questions that you asked. And again, if there's anyone attending here virtually, uh, by all means, please reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You could also
Thank you so
just
much.
email me. Thanks.
Do you also use Twitter? Do you have a Twitter account as well? Are you active as well?
I have one of them. I'm not active on it, but I'm on LinkedIn, and you can always
LinkedIn,
email
of
me at
course.
david.komar. You
Of
see the
course.
name on the screen there at
Yeah,
live,
sure.
live.com.
Very useful also for the audience. I'm sure they will try to get connect to you. Thank you very much again, and have a good day. Dear audience and dear distinguished guests, we are about to closing this webinar today, and tomorrow we will continue our meetings and webinars in Eurasia Airshow 2020. Have a good day, good evening, all of you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
There's a world of miracles inside our bodies.
See every color on Earth. Hear sounds that inspire. Feel more than just heat. Taste a world of flavor. Smell the miracles of nature.
See, smell, hear, taste, touch. Widen your world.
There are those of us who like to venture to the unexplored, to see the beauty in the strange and unknown. Those of us who go out there with a sense of wonder. If you're one of us, and if you want to explore more of this great planet, we're ready to take you there. It's time. Turkish Airlines. Widen your world.